Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob? I mean, some of you might be like,
Continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive.
You are listening to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth. And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do. So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. Today is kind of an exciting day because we are celebrating, give me a drum roll, which I used to be a drummer in middle school, so this is totally channeling my inner child. Episode freaking 20. 20 episodes on this very unscripted, totally winging it journey. And for those of you that have been with me from the very beginning, thank you so much for supporting me right out of the gates, not knowing what the hell this podcast was going to be, what it was going to be about. I have thrown various lengths at you. We had some starting off at 30, and the last few have been an hour and 30. And for those of you that have really carved out that kind of time in your day and week, thank you. Because I know sometimes when I see anything over 30 minutes on YouTube or a podcast, I'm like, yeah, no thanks. My attention span is that of a toddler still. So I know how big of a deal it is to commit to something like that. And I hope the stories have been engaging enough to keep you in. I know one of you, Jessie, I'll give you a little shout out. She had posted on Korbey's episode that she was thinking like, I'll just listen for the first 30 minutes before bed. And then she's like, I couldn't turn it off. I'm like, I know, his story was so captivating. So truly, thank you. And I do hope to keep this one a little bit shorter today, but you know how that goes. So yeah, 20 episodes. And so a little background on why this episode is what it is today, because it was not supposed to be a celebrate your 20 episodes. But like everything, now I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes total sense of why everything happened last Sunday. And I'll explain that here in a second, because I think I was actually supposed to pause and reflect and take a moment to celebrate 20 episode milestone, which may not seem like a big deal to some of you, but it's a huge deal to me. And how so much work has gone into this. Actually, it made me think of, I don't know if I'll get in trouble for sharing this. Maybe. That's a chance, a risk I'm willing to take. But I feel like Snoop Dogg said it best.
Last but not least, I want to thank me. I want to thank me for believing in me. I want to thank me for doing all this hard work. I want to thank me for having no days off. I want to thank me for never quitting. I want to thank me for always being a giver and trying to give more than I receive. I want to thank me for trying to do more right than wrong. I want to thank me for just being me at all times. Snoop Dogg, you a bad...
I heard that and I was like, I couldn't have said it. That's Snoop Dogg. For real. There has been so much time and energy and heart, but so much healing that has gone into this podcast. And the last few episodes in particular have really triggered me. And this is something like I haven't necessarily shared all of this, but oh man, I've had some stuff come up. And so I'll take you back to the most recent life lesson that was slapped across my face is that I had sat down with a very good friend of mine from the gym. And if you follow me on social media, I wrote a huge post about it. I wrote a novel because that's what I do. So go feel free to read that. I'll give you the short and sweet version here. Anyway, so we sat down. He carved out time in his Sunday night, came over, recorded this amazing episode. And you guys, this was the first time he has ever opened up about his story, his childhood story. Never been to therapy, never openly talked about it really outside of, with his wife. And I've gotten to know both of them so well at the gym. And I adore these two humans so much because they are truly the definition of do not judge a book by its cover. And they are fully aware of their persona, with their tough Harley vibe. But they are truly some of the sweetest and kindest and most generous people you will ever meet. And I know without a doubt, if I ever needed anything, I could call up both Don and Megan and they would be there in a heartbeat. So anyway, we sat down and he shared his story, and you guys, it was amazing. It was amazing. And we got done and I made the joke that, oh my gosh, my worst fear is that I record a whole podcast with no audio. And then he laughed and I pulled up the file, and sure enough, my worst fear came true. An hour and 14 minutes. Just gone. I was crushed. And not so much because I had to redo the work or it was this lost time. It was because it took so much for him to come and share his story for the first time, and then it was lost. I was just numb. I was staring out the window and the storm was coming in, and I dissociated like you wouldn't believe, because I'm like, I don't want to feel this right now. And it wasn't me. I was feeling like imagining having to tell him that next morning. That was unbearable. And that was where I had to check out. Nope, can't feel that. I cannot disappoint this person, because we had talked about that on the podcast of one of his triggers being disappointment, because he experienced so much disappointment in his childhood. And here I go, oh my gosh. So I didn't sleep that night. But I'm actually incredibly grateful that it happened with him because of how understanding he was. And it was actually trying to snap me out of it. And he was basically if you don't knock this off and beating yourself, I'm going to shove my size 12 foot up your, you know what? And that's done. So in a very loving way, he was telling me, stop beating yourself up. This is okay. So yeah, that was a podcast blow big time. And honestly, that night I was so frustrated. I was just fuck this. I am done with the headaches. I am done. And this was my ego, right? Ego swooping in, because that's what ego does. It will just blow up everything, even though it's something that once you sit with it, you'll figure it out. You'll learn the lesson. But in that moment, my ego was like, I'm done. I'm done with this headache. I'm done with the work. I'm all the things, right? And what was really interesting is that the next day I was editing the podcast that was going to be going out on Tuesday for Everyday M&K. And everything they said was exactly what I needed to hear, of not giving up, and that this journey is hard, but you just have to keep going. You have to push through the hard days, the days that you want to give up. You want to throw your hands up. You think you're going to get all of these subscribers and all of these followers, and it just doesn't happen overnight. And, I think about their journey. They've been in this 5 years, and it's really easy. And I think this is for everyone, is you can look at someone else's journey and think oh, that must be nice, or think that it just happened overnight, when you have no idea behind the scenes what goes into that. And I could compare myself to them, right? And want to compare my growth to them. And that's not fair, because it's completely different journeys. And so I want you to remember that too, whoever you're comparing yourself to or your journey to, whether that's in your career, in your health, or whatever, comparison is the thief of joy. So please don't do that. But hearing their journey and just the freaking grit and hard work that went into it, it was like, Tammy, you are on episode 20. Can you just stop and celebrate that? And can you celebrate the fact that you have showed up every week, even though it's been messy, even though it's been unscripted, even though your mics have cut out, even though your computer screen is cracked, even though the lighting has sucked at times? Can you just stop and celebrate that you showed up despite all of that? And that even though things weren't perfect, you still showed up and you still gave your energy and your heart to try to help people heal. Can you just stop and appreciate that for a freaking second? And so that was the big lesson in everything that just happened. And like I said, the cops were very kind in making sure that I said, hey, slow down, slow down. How about you actually pull over, take a moment, cry in your car, and then let's get back on the road. I didn't plan that little, it's not even an analogy. That's a true story of what happened, but it is literally what I needed to move through this week. I needed to slow down. I needed to stop, have that moment of reflection. I needed to cry. I cried a lot this week already to release a lot of things and then refocus, right? I had to recalibrate in my car. I'm like, okay, from here on out, we're going to drive a little more cautiously. We're going to pay attention. We're going to be present. There is no rush to get where you're going. Oh my gosh. Metaphors just keep coming. You will eventually get there. And when you do, it's going to be great. You're going to be there with friends and eat a delicious omelet and laugh. And so yes, I am officially back on the road of this podcast journey, and I'm going to celebrate every little milestone, every little detour. You know, even if I get those flat tires once in a while, I have to be able to pause and celebrate what I'm going to learn from that, because I have learned a lot, even just this last week with everything that happened. And Don and I had actually talked about this too, in that what often triggers us when we can have like a big explosive reaction, for those of us that were not taught emotional regulation and you can go from 0 to 100, that's me. Oftentimes it's not about that one thing in that moment. It is often triggering something much deeper that your inner child has suppressed for maybe 20, 30, 40 years. And so Don and I had actually talked about that on the podcast. And that certainly came up this week for me is, yes, I had a ton of disappointment and what happened and sadness and all of those things. But what it really brought up for me, once I was able to calm my ego down and actually look at it, was a big trigger for me. Again, people pleaser, hello, is disappointing people, right? Don doesn't like to be disappointed, and I don't like disappointing people. And here we are. So disappointing people and feeling like a burden. So now he has to come back, right? Well, he's going to come back. I'm making him. You heard that, Don? Just, you're not getting off the hook. So again, being a burden. Oh man, all of the things came flooding in. So it was just like a whole nother depth and level of these wounds that I have been continuing to heal. But now here it is trickling into my work, right? So that was another big lesson in all of this. And I needed to be able to step back and move through that and feel all the feels to get to that place where I can now see it. I wasn't seeing clearly Sunday night, obviously, when I was about ready to throw my computer through the wall and crack the screen officially. If you guys can see it, you would laugh. It's pretty hilarious. Actually, Korbey and Don both commented on it. Waiting for those sponsors, yo. Get ourselves a new laptop and camera. That's the other thing. That was the other lesson in all of this, is that after I didn't have the producer for the first 8 episodes, I bought a mic off Amazon and I've been recording from my webcam that's built into my crappy computer. And I have this tiny little ring light that I don't even know if it's doing anything. Because again, worthiness, right? This worthiness wound of how much more am I willing to invest in me in this dream? Because, oh man, I have made a lot of investments in my healing over the last few years, like big time. And one of these podcast episodes, I'll share a little bit more about that. But last year, I made the biggest investment in myself. And it was more so because I know I needed that support while I was in the cocoon. And so that was a year-long coaching program that I did, literally because I needed people to keep me upright, people to hold my hand. Ooh. So to Amber and Robin, if you were listening, and all of the women that were in that Soul Seed Awakening program, thank you, because I don't feel like I'm exaggerating when I say that you saved me. You were the hardest year of my life. And so But I had to make a huge investment to do that. And I think I was kind of getting to this point where I was just like, how much more can I do? How much more can I invest in myself? Like, I apparently still need to, have a roof over my head and I think feed my children. Yeah. So, I'm thinking about all of those things. And of course, ego wants to take you on this path where the worst case scenario and all of this stuff. And so I was withholding, like supporting myself when I very much can go on Amazon and get equipment that I need. I don't want anyone to think, like, what's going on over there. But I think I was just in this energy where I was really becoming almost like hyper independent and done. And I talked about that like to a fault, right? It's one thing to be like, yeah, I can do this in a healthy, positive way. But when I started sacrificing the quality of the podcast, it was like, ooh, something's got to change, because I was just like, I'm waiting for people to like pour into this podcast and help support it. And then I can up the quality again. Well, you might lose some people along the way if you keep showing up with a crappy episode or they can't hear, they can't see clearly. So this is hopefully the last week of that. Just so they're like, did you make upgrades, Tammy? I did take advantage of Amazon Prime Day, and I got a new microphone set up coming through where I can have more than one microphone, so people won't be cutting in and out when I have guests. I bought new lighting. So I'm here for the long haul. So as Katie had said in her episode, that you can't, you give up. You just got to keep going. And that's what I'm doing. So I had to have that little moment, that little setback, right? And I always think, what, you got to get on the other side of it though, right? But I'm lucky. I shouldn't say lucky. Luck has nothing to do with it. I have just been through this healing journey enough times to know that every time I have what we would think of a setback or a breakdown, is I know that is only going to lead to my breakthrough. And I know that now. So thank goodness I have that anchor. So even though my ego had that moment of like, fuck this, sorry, I knew I just needed to move through that. And eventually once I did, then I could see the blessing in all of this and actually get excited for what's to come. So remember that. Remember that. We oftentimes need to break down. We need to break down the parts of us, the patterns, the limiting thoughts and beliefs that are getting in our way. We have to break that stuff down. We have to get rid of the mask and these roles that aren't serving us in order to have the breakthrough. And this for me was just another layer of it. And this is why the healing journey never ends, as I say every time in the freaking intro with Erica. It's so true. It's just like another layer and another depth, but I feel like I can move through it faster now. And that's really the whole point, is you're never just going to like magically heal and never be triggered again. It's just hopefully now you got this handy dandy little tool belt that you can pull out the tools to know how to support yourself through it. And sometimes we make that harder on ourselves, right? Like I certainly could have done a few different things earlier in the week to try to shift my energy. I could have gotten outside more. I could have went paddleboarding, because that's usually a fantastic way to help clear my energy. But sometimes I can't do those things. And we talked about that. I don't remember what episode, about having the fire drill thing, right? And so, because not in every situation, I can't just run to the lake and hop on my paddleboard. Like, what could I do within the 30 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes that I have right now to try to shift my energy? And those are the things that I have to try to anchor into. And I think it took me a little bit longer to go through the list, or I was trying certain things on the list, but they weren't necessarily working. Like oftentimes working out will do it for me, and it did in the moment. And then all of a sudden I was right back. And so I needed to do a little deeper work this time. And so I found a meditation yesterday that was like, whoa, that was like exactly what I needed to hear. And holy waterworks. But I felt like, oh, okay, here we go. So well, that is an exciting thing, that there is always something on the other side. And every time, you think of storms that come through, and it was so freaking symbolic. And I knew it was symbolic when they came through Sunday night after Dawn left. When that storm came through, it literally reflected all of my energy. I'm like, am I controlling the weather now? Am I that spiritual? Just kidding. Oh, it'd be great if the lightning struck right now on a sunny day. Bam! Oh, sorry, that probably wasn't great in the microphone. Oh, anyway. So yeah, I'm grateful for all of you for sticking with me throughout this and the growing pains. And that was really the whole point is I knew this wasn't, hey, there's a siren. That's confirmation. Haha, take that. You're maybe not going to hear that because I have a great editor. Oh, but anyway, yeah, so I'm grateful for all of you. And thank you for riding with me through the waves and the growing pains. And like I said, that was kind of the whole point is I wanted to just start. I just needed to start. I had been sitting on this dream for years and I just needed to start. And that's why I had to invest in the podcast producer right away because I didn't know how to do anything. And he was so great. I mean, within a couple weeks of meeting him and getting started, we had the podcast trailer done. We had the intro done. We got everything set up, to get it out to Apple and Spotify. And there were so many behind the scenes things that I didn't know. And that's why I had such a hard time getting started because I was trying to figure it out all on my own this whole time. And I get caught in analysis paralysis so easy. Like overwhelm will shut down me so quickly. My ego does not like the feeling of overwhelm. It's like, nope, we're done here. So that's the worst thing, right? Because then you do nothing, which doesn't help you reduce the level of overwhelm. So it's like, ego, stop it. It's kind of like binge eating, right? Like, no. I'm actually trying to eat healthier, to be healthier, to maybe lose weight. So you trying to use food, ego. Do you see what you're doing here? It is complete sabotage, completely backwards. And that's kind of what was happening with me and all of this. But yeah, so I had made that investment with him for the first 8 episodes to just boom and get him out there. And we had done some batch recordings. So we were recording 4 episodes at one day. You can watch episode 4. You can tell. I was just those of you that can't see me, I look tired and I'm channeling and granted those episodes were shorter. That helped. But I needed to eventually to make that a pivot and a transition. And so, but I learned so much. Working with him and I'm forever grateful for helping get me started and just pushing me out the door because I don't know if I would have gotten started, if I would be 20 episodes in, if it wasn't for seeing that ad on Instagram of hey, do you want a podcast producer? And then meeting and then getting going. And so, Katie and Melissa had also talked about this is sometimes the next step isn't gonna be the thing. It's just the next step. You have to take a step. And I think sometimes we're afraid to get started because we don't know we're expecting that one step to lead us to our final destination. And it rarely ever works like that. Everything is a stepping stone. And so if you can see that, it's what? I just need to make one step. I just need to take one leap of faith and see where that takes me. My huge leap of faith was leaving the clinical setting back in 2016, having no idea of what I was going to do, where I was going to go. And, here I am. I had no idea when I left in 2016 that I would be here hosting a podcast and doing inner child work. No idea. This was not on my radar at all. You guys, and that wasn't even 10 years ago. That goes back to Jamie's episode. We talked about this with Katie and Melissa too, of it's so hard. When we think about where we'll be in 10 years, we often kind of jip ourselves on what we could actually achieve. But if you look back, what you were doing 10 years ago, how different, my life is completely different. Completely different. I had a 6-month-old baby 10 years ago. Holy crap. Oh, so much has changed in those 10 years. And so I am very excited to see where that goes. But I needed to take that one first leap and one first step to get going. And so I encourage all of you to just what is the one thing, one tiny little thing that you can do to just put yourself in the energy of it? It might not even be an actual thing in what I refer to as your 3D world, our physical world. Maybe it's just energetically trying it on, energetically putting yourself in the place of, ooh, what if I did a TED Talks, sometime? What would that feel like? Obviously, I'm not on there signing up for a TED Talk right now or planning out my speech or whatever. I just I'm going to allow myself to close my eyes and sit in the energy of what would that feel like to walk on stage, to share this message, to bring Lil Tam Tam out onto that stage when she said, make sure you let everyone see me. I'm like, okay, how's this? Am I making you proud yet? I can sit in that energy and I can feel that. And if that excites me and lights me up, then okay, I can keep putting myself in that energetic space and maybe watch the things that unfold in my physical world. Maybe that's where we release control and have to figure out the how. Is you say to God and the universe, like, I'm just going to play around in that little dream that I have. I'm just going to energetically pretend that's happening right now. And I'm going to allow myself to, ego doesn't get to come to this party. Ego has to sit back and watch, but you get to put yourself into that dream, that what if, and sit with the energy of that, how it would feel. What would you be wearing? What would you be doing? You know, maybe that's like that you want to travel. I mean, this could be literally anything. Maybe you want to write a book. Imagine yourself sitting down and, you know, signing your name in people's books. I've done that before. And I mean, it could be anything, but just close your eyes and just give yourself a moment to sit in the energy of the thing. Because then it doesn't get so scary. Your ego doesn't want to swoop in and be like, you can't do that. You're going to make that happen. You're not capable enough, confident enough. You don't have enough money to invest in that. It'll tell you all the things immediately. But now you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to allow myself to sit in the energy of it. So back off, ego. I'm not going to quit my job tomorrow and go to Broadway. Maybe you are. Who knows? But it's so important for us to release the how and release expectations. And I think that was another lesson in all of this for me as well, is I just have to trust, right? If I am so committed to this inner child mission and I know like this is a direct, like, Tammy, here's your assignment from God, go. And I have to trust that I will be supported in that. So I need to get out of my own damn way. And I needed that little reminder. The reminder, unfortunately. Thank you, God, and got it. So anyway, I talked a little bit about what came up for me with Don's episode. And I feel like if any of you that are Survivor fans, I don't even know if that show is still on. I don't watch TV really anymore. And if you ever noticed, like my backdrop, there's a TV that can go there and sometimes does when the kids want to watch movies, but it's just never on. But I used to watch Survivor and I always like, oh, I want to be on that show someday. Like, I think I could do it, except when they have to hold their hands above their head for things, I would be out. Like, I lose feeling in my hands and arms immediately. So if anyone wants to diagnose me, feel free. Refer me to somebody. But yeah, when you watch Survivor, like the last episode, when they have like the two final people, they like kind of walk through memory lane, right? And they, you know, revisit each castaway. And I thought about, you know, doing that today. I was like, I told them I would keep this episode short and we're already at 27 minutes. So I won't go through each and every episode. But I do want to point out a couple things that came up after some of the most recent episodes, and that with Christy and our whole episode on sexual shame. I can't believe I'm sharing this on here. One of my very dear friends sent me something in the mail. I was like, wow, this is my first like fan mail. But it was not mail. It was not. Thank you, Michelle. Oh, she got a massive kick out of that one. So I'm just going to leave it there. You guys can fill in the blanks. But that was something else that several people had commented and said, like, okay, like, when are we going shopping? And so I said something to Christy. I'm like, maybe that would be really fun to have a bunch of women, maybe all different ages, go on a little shopping trip and she can show us and teach us and things, because there are so many women that resonated with that episode and being incredibly uncomfortable around that topic at all around pleasure. And I have tried very casually to bring some of this up with Aria, and it breaks my heart because I can already tell she's 10, she's going on 11, but she is very much an old soul, and we can have more in-depth conversations, but I can already feel that there is some like embarrassment and shame around talking about that. And I was like, Aria, like, this is why we have to talk about it. Because like I don't want you to be a 41-year-old and still like cringing and hiding your tampon. so so I'm working on that one with her. But again, it obviously starts young and she's already picked up on the stuff that I've been carrying around for all these years. And so I'm working on that one, but I just thought that was funny. So Christy, if you're watching, we gotta get a little field trip planned apparently. Oh, and then Colleen's episode. Oh my goodness. So many amazing things have happened since that episode. So many people reached out to her and just thanked her for sharing her story. And what was so amazing so as she drove, she had a 2-hour drive back home. When she got home that day, had connected with a woman, and what do you know? She had lost a son when he was 5 months old. And so they instantly connected. This is 2 hours after she recorded that episode with me. And, because you just connect with your people, right? The universe will bring you your people that you need in your life. And that woman absolutely needed Colleen in her life because that woman kind of did the opposite of what Colleen did. And what a lot of women and families do because we don't know how to handle that level of pain. And ego will just shut it down. Ego will say, take everything down. Let's just out of sight, out of mind. But it'll never leave your heart. It'll never leave your heart. And when we suppress that kind of pain and sadness, it will manifest into physical symptoms, or we will turn to things outside of ourselves like alcohol or drugs or food or whatever to numb that kind of pain. And so by Colleen, shining this incredibly bright light to say, hey, we can talk about grief. We can talk about loss. It was so huge. So again, thank you to those of you that reached out to her or me and expressed how much that episode meant to you. And so, yeah, that was a biggie. So, and the episode with Korbey, this one triggered me big time to the point where my ego was trying to convince me not to share it. And I haven't even told him that yet. Because when I first watched it, I'm watching it from this inner child perspective, right? And I was like, oh, I love this episode so much. Like, this is going to help so many people and just connecting with little Korbey and all of that. And that's all I was thinking about going into this episode. I was in tunnel vision, inner child work. I did not think outside of that at all. And then the second time I watched it, all of a sudden I was like, oh. And I did what I have told all of you not to do and compare your story to someone else's and feel like all of a sudden yours is invalid. Because all of a sudden I felt myself as this white girl from a small town who had a pretty good childhood. And I was like, oh my gosh. And my ego immediately swooped in and was starting to tell me those stories about, oh, poor Tammy and your little white girl and your problems and your things. And I was just like, how are people going to perceive this? And, we didn't even talk about race and those things. None of that stuff came because it wasn't about that. Would I love to have him on and talk about that? Yes, 100%. And I already told him that I wanted to come on for other episodes. But that triggered me. So we recorded that on Tuesday. And that whole week, finally on Saturday, I had reached out to Andrea, who was on episode 3, I think, my branding manager, who was just like, she knows I love her. She's listening, but she's just become one of my people. And I reached out to her. I'm like, will you listen to this? And just let me know how this comes off, because my ego got in my head about how it was going to come off, how it was going to be perceived by everybody else. And again, to the point where I was getting so worked up and so scared. Again, I wasn't sleeping. My digestive system was a mess. I was basically in fight or flight, right? All the stuff was going on, yet I'm still trying to function. But this was just brewing because here I know this episode was so good. And now I'm so fearful of it coming off a certain way or being perceived a certain way that my ego again almost was like, yeah, we're not going to share this. We can't put that out there. That's too scary. What are people going to say? The internet's going to tear you up. And I mean, I went down a rabbit hole, and I finally reached out to Andrea for help and was like, please pull me back up. Please talk some sense into me. Please let me know like how, and like, thank you. Like she threw me a life raft and like, come back, Tammy. Okay. And I had to work through that. But again, I was so grateful for the things that came up for me, because obviously there's stuff that I need to work on, that I need to learn more about, that I need to understand. And so I don't let ego keep me in the shame cycle for long. It certainly had me there for a little bit, because there is so much that I don't understand. There is so much that I don't know. And I could never relate to Korbey's story ever. And can I have love and compassion and hold space for him and all of those things? Yes. And is there so much more I can hopefully do with this platform to get that word out there, that this is some kids' reality still, and that they need help and healing, and so do their parents and the generations, all of that. Yes. But that was a real hard week as well. And what was interesting is I wrote this whole post thinking that I was like working my way through it. And I had Andrea read that too, because she's like, are you sure this isn't still from your ego? Like, damn it, it is. It is, because what I was trying to do was to like call it out, so that way I called it out before anyone else did. Like, that's totally classic ego, right? Like, if I make fun of myself first, then anything that anyone else says won't hurt as bad. Like, that's literally what I was doing. But my ego like tricked me to think, oh, we'll just write So she was right. She was right. And I needed someone to like, again, slap me across the face so I could, logical Tammy could see it and read it again and be like, you're right. That very much is still coming from my ego. And my ego was making the episode about me. It was not about me. And I knew that, but ego was so wrapped up in the fear of judgment that I couldn't get out of it. So eventually I was able to see, like, this is not about you. The message in that episode is so clear and so beautiful that you have to get out of the way and let Korbey shine. Let Korbey's story speak for itself. And so, thankfully I did that. But so you guys, I joke, I don't joke about what happens behind the scenes, because it seems like a lot of the computer time and editing and making clips and uploading. But I'm telling you, it requires so much emotional work and healing work to show up this way. But I know, again, I'm here for a reason. It's coming up for a reason. And I'm okay, obviously, with sharing that stuff, because I hope people can learn from that and know, like, oh, it's okay when things come up for me too. And how do I move through it? And how do I support myself through that? And so, yeah, that one threw me. I was not expecting that at all. So, but yeah, that one was another very, very powerful one. So I'm so grateful for Korbey, and I can't wait to see what he continues to do. So, yeah. And as I mentioned, like with Everyday M&K, what came up for me with there, and just like the not giving up, and it just came at the most perfect time of when I wanted to do that. So yeah, it's been a really fun journey so far. I have learned a lot. I have healed a lot. And again, I want to thank all of you for sticking with me. And I want to give a massive thank you and shout out to Faith, who has been editing these videos for me. And the quality that I have been sending her, she has done everything she can to salvage them, to make them remotely presentable to all of you. And so I sent her a message when I got my Amazon cart. I'm like, I ordered some new stuff. And I think she was like, oh God, thank God. She is the kindest and sweetest soul, seriously. And I know I was destined to be in her life, and vice versa. She speaks my language, angel numbers and energy. But thank you, Faith. I know you're watching this because you're editing this, but I cannot thank you enough for rolling with it and doing whatever you and your software can do to save these episodes. But I'm very excited to hopefully do some upgrades here in these next coming episodes, so you don't have to work so hard or put your software through what may make your computer combust. But that's what I got going on. And man, it's just life. And I really wanted Aria to come on here at some point. She picked out my outfit today. I was hoping that maybe I'd be able to bribe her with it. She's like, "Oh, can I style you for your podcast?" And I should have said, "Only if you're on it one of these days, guys," because I know it would be an amazing conversation because we have really great conversations. I'm so fortunate that my 10-year-old daughter is as insightful as she is. But she's still a 10-year-old. And what I have really wanted her to come on and talk about is kind of how she moves through things now, because she definitely has a process of it. And it's beautiful. And it took me a while to be like, oh, this is okay. Okay. I got to allow her to move through this, because when her ego needs to unleash, oh, it unleashes. And oftentimes it unleashes at me. But now I know, I'm like, okay, that's just ego. Before I would take things personal and get really triggered and really sad and hurt. But now I'm like, okay, I'm just going to let her ego spew and get out. And then when it's like she's a different person when she just does that. And so at some point, I hope that she would come on and talk about that. But we've also just had just everyday life stuff happens and comes up. And, there's so many stories that I can share. So I'm hoping maybe you guys can help me start a little Bring Aria On campaign. So at one point she was going to do a segment called Aria Eats, but that didn't go anywhere. So, but she's one of my greatest teachers. And so I will share this one. It was again, like a simple thing that happened, but it ended up being really powerful in that both kids were home. It was a Monday, and I had a lot of editing stuff to do still to release the podcast on Tuesday. So I was like, you guys, like, mom's got to work for this amount of time, and then we can go on our adventure and do these things. And it was one of those, they're like, okay. But yet they were still there, very much in my space, and very much still like pulling at my energy is like, if you were a mom, you know what it's like to feel overstimulated. And at one point you're just like, you just kind of snap. And like, I didn't snap in an angry way, but it was kind of in a funny way where it was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm going bananas. And then Aria was like, okay, like, got it. I will, go do my own thing. And cause like sometimes again, I just need to finish this thought. I just need to get this one thing done. And I know enough now when that's appropriate versus when I need to put the thing down and make sure my kids feel seen and heard. And I did that before. And then I was asking for my time. That's when it was not going well. And so that happened, and it was all good. There wasn't anything else that came of that until that night I was cleaning. And so Aria was in her room, doing like teenagery stuff, even though she's still 10. And I just opened the door with my little Swiffer duster. I should sponsor that. Just kidding. Someone reach out to Swiffer. So I go in her room. I don't knock. I just open the door and I start dusting. And she kind of looks at me like, okay, you're okay, whatever. Didn't seem too bothered by it. So I left. All of a sudden, I open the door again. This time I bust in with the vacuum cleaner, and she's on her bed. I bump her bed a bunch of times as I'm trying to vacuum under it. And now I can see that she's getting a little agitated, and probably rightfully so. Well, then the tipping point was that I had to clean or vacuum around her desk, and there was a couple things on the floor. Well, now I'm touching her stuff. Oh, don't go there. If you've got kids, don't touch their stuff. So not only did I touch her stuff, I tried to pick her phone charger off the floor so I didn't vacuum over the cord. Well, in doing that, I dropped the phone, and oh man, yeah, as you can guess, she unleashed on me. And now I'm triggered because I don't feel appreciated. Like, I'm cleaning your freaking room. Like, did I ask you to do it? No, I'm in here cleaning your room. So I know why I'm triggered. Now she's triggered. And it was just this funny thing. And then we both knew it. So after we had that little moment, took some time away. She closes her door. Her ego does her thing. And I'm still vacuuming. And well, Arlo comes up and he's like, Mom, why is Aria crying? And I was like, well, I touched her stuff. I didn't ask for permission. And so she's a little upset about it. And so she's moving through those emotions. And I'm like, that's really cool that you noticed and that you said something so we can make sure that she was okay. And so just kind of giving him props for being in tune with his own energy and intuition. Right. And So she gets done doing her thing. I'm done vacuuming. Now I know it's appropriate time to go back in and talk to her and kind of share like why I was triggered and why she was and kind of come up with a solution where I said, like, you're right. I should have knocked. Two, I could have asked if it was okay if I came in and cleaned. Or said, hey, Aria, I'd like to pick up and clean your room. Would you like to pick up your stuff or would you like me to? Right? So there was things that I could have done to avoid that situation. But here we are, and we like to learn the hard way over here. so so we worked it out. It was all good. All good. Well, then I said, like, no, I just want to go talk to Arlo quick. And she's like, talk to Arlo about what? I'm like, well, what just happened? She's like, well, it's none of his business. And then she's getting kind of upset again. And I was like, Aria, this has nothing to do with you. Like, I'm not going to spill the tea on what actually happened. Like, I just need to go validate his experience and that he picked up that something was wrong. And she didn't quite understand that. And I said, that was me growing up. Because I wasn't ever really in, the arguments or disputes or things like that, but I was always there witnessing them. And to be a kid and to feel unsettled and not know what's going on, and then no one comes and talks to you about it. Because again, you don't know that we should do that. And so I don't blame my parents or sisters or anyone for not coming in and checking on me when it wasn't about me. You wouldn't think to do that. But now I know how important it is to do that, because that is a big reason why I think I became so disconnected from my intuition growing up, because I always felt that, okay, people are feeling a certain way over here or upset, but over here, no one's talking about it. So it didn't feel like things weren't matching up as I had talked about before. And so I just wanted to validate that for Arlo. And so she finally understood. And then I went and talked to Arlo, and you guys, oh, the look on his face and just his energy of just feeling seen and heard and appreciated for his intuition and for trusting himself and just helping like lock that in. Like, hey, buddy, like, I just wanted to let you know that you were right. Like, Aria was upset and something did happen. And when we worked through it, no, like, everything is okay, but you were right. Your intuition told you something was off and you were right. But like, now everything is okay. And then he was cool and good to go. But man, that validation just like, oh, it was so good. It was so good. So that's the kind of stuff that I got going on over here. This healing thing is like a legit full-time job, because you are not only trying to like unlearn all of the things as an adult, but then have to relearn while you're also trying to help your kids learn. And I'm already trying to help Aria unlearn some stuff too, right? And so it's kind of exhausting. And a recent story, I'll share this on another time, but is I have to be mindful of when I swoop in with my lessons and things about ego, because sometimes Aria was like, I don't want to hear about ego right now. Like, got it. I need to hold off. And like, maybe now isn't the time for the life lesson, right? I know that. I need to move through my own process too. And so sometimes it's remembering that. And, again, people pleaser fixer over here is like, I want to get in and fix things and help people feel better. Sometimes you forget you gotta let them move through it themselves. And so that's something I'm definitely still trying to learn as well. But so yeah, that's kind of what today's episode is about. And I have a little request for all of you, and that to celebrate 20 episodes is, and again, I feel like each of these episodes, like Snoop said, like, this is my way of giving, right? And I had reached out to Andrea about like, I really want to like celebrate these 20 episodes, and like, well, what about if you ask for 20 new reviews? And I was like, oh, and at first I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then as soon as it's so brief, where my ego is like, what? You can't ask for that. You're going to be a burden. And like, well, what if no one does it? And what if they give you a bad review? I was like, oh, like, ego, shut up. So here I am working through that again and taking on Andrea's challenge to celebrate 20 episodes. If you would be so kind to leave a review, whether you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or even if you're watching on YouTube. I know you can't rate on YouTube, but even just leaving a comment or subscribing, all of that stuff, you guys, is like an amazing, beautiful gift for me and Little Tam Tam over here. And it's a completely free thing that you can do to help support this channel. And so if you would be so kind after you get done watching this to send a quick, even if you just give it a 5-star rating, if you're going to give it a 2 or 1, just don't bother. Just kidding. Just kidding. Gotta be authentic and real over here. But that would be amazing and a very, very fun way to celebrate 20 episodes of showing up and doing the work and healing. And I would love to be able to receive that gift from you. So thank you in advance. I'm excited to see who helps me get there, because you never know how that good energy and karma might come back around for you. So who's going to help me? Who's going to help me reach that 20 rating, 20 comments, 20 reviews goal? We'll be looking. So thank you. And hopefully we'll have another fun update here coming up very soon with my friend Zoe, because we hosted that retreat, our inner child healing retreat out in Sedona in April. And we got some fun updates. So hopefully she'll be hopping on here with me shortly to talk about that as well. But in the meantime, I just want to thank all of you so much for being on this journey with me and continuing to show up for you. Because again, I know this is an investment of your time and energy. And I know that sometimes you have to work through your ego to hit play on these episodes, because by now, you know, they're probably going to evoke some sort of emotion or feeling within you. And ego doesn't always want you to do that. And so sometimes you might be like, yeah, I'm going to miss an episode, or, oh, I don't think I want to read that one yet or listen to it yet. And that's okay, right? Because then maybe you listen to it the exact time that you need it. I always trust that as well. But I know that these episodes are not always easy to listen to. And you have to do your own work with your ego to say, can I show up for my inner child and just hear, Tammy, like something about that feels healing, and I need you to let me do that. And so very, very proud of you for those of you that continue to do that week after week and hitting play and sitting with these feels yourself and moving through the emotions yourself and starting to honor your inner child and your feelings and even your ego each and every week. And so I thank you so much. And I'm excited to get back with some of my guests that are coming up after this one. But it felt really good to take the time to pause, to pull over and have that moment of reflection so we can get back on track. So thank you so much for tuning in with me today. And I'm sending all the love and light and things, positive energy your way. All right. See you next week, everybody.